Hello. So, I enjoyed doing the first one, and I was kind of thinking about some of the things that I'd said during it, and not wanting to beat a dead horse over it or anything, but I found the Comics Journal Library number 6 book about writers, which is right there. Has interviews with Chris Claremont, Jerry Conway, Steve Englehart, Steve Gerber, Archie Goodwin, Alan Moore, Denny O'Neil, Len Wein, Marv Wolfman, and Harlan Ellison. And I believe it's collections that were published in Comics Journal. I'm pretty sure they're all 80s-ish. Doesn't really say. But yeah, around the 80s. And a really, really good book. As I've said before, said last time, I really enjoy Comics Journal, and they're kind of affiliated with Fangraphix books, and I think they have some really neat things. Sometimes they can be a little, I find them to be a little pompous as far as, like, you know, they really felt that everybody creating comics should be pushing the form, and just to resort to doing kind of superhero stuff or something that's fun is, you know, you're not contributing anything. That some of the impressions, even from this book, some of the interviews give the impression that you should always be pushing the boundaries no matter what and be creating great literature. And I completely disagree with that, obviously. I enjoy reading stuff like we talked about in the last one, Axe Cop, just for pure enjoyment. Although it is nice, obviously, when somebody pushes the boundaries and creates something really, really memorable, but at the end of the day, it's still comic books. It still should be entertaining. So I'm pulling this out because in the interview with Marv Wolfman, was the name I was trying to remember, when I was talking about artists and writers in the previous one, it was Marv's comments about working on Teen Titans with George Perez that kind of popped into my head, and I just kind of wanted to run through it. Again, it's, you know, I'm trying not to push the point too much, but I just thought his comments were really interesting about how closely they work together, and how an artist can kind of has his own contributions. So he kind of talks a little bit about why they enjoy working together. He's saying that they're very similar people, and you know, sometimes George would call him up and say he has a great idea, and Marv would say, funny because I just wrote a script kind of talking about that exact thing. So just that they worked on the same kind of wavelengths. Talk a little bit about their background, and I'm not familiar with Teen Titans at all, so I mean, some of this I can't talk to you about the specific things, but he's talking specifically about a Runaways story arc there. Talking about writing credits and stuff like that, and how they credit things. So he's being asked about the Runaways story. Was that both of you? He says, I tend to work for the most part with a fairly complete plot. You can always tell when George and I come up with a plot together because the credit reads co-plotters, and there will be a separate credit that say co-creators. George gets the plots and does what he wants with them, takes away scenes, adds scenes. He never changes the story, but he'll pace it his way, change the fight scenes around and whatever else, and add what he wants. With the Runaways story, he completely followed the plot. I don't think there was a single change. He tells me that I caught, without knowing it, a relative of his very closely, and it made him care about the story even more. So I just thought that was really interesting, because obviously, you know, he's being given the plot. He's kind of shaping it how he sees it as far as what he's going to do artistically, and what things he feels can be dropped and what things can be changed. And obviously Marv is just giving him the story, where I gather from some other interviews that I've seen with people, sometimes the writer will ask for specific things, and I think even in this book there might be some mention of that with some of the other interviews, where they'll want like a specific thing, like this scene I really want to play out like this, and not quite giving storyboards, but that kind of idea. But it sounds like because of their close relationship, he really trusts George, and he'll just let him run away with things. There was one other little part here, I think, just on the next page. yeah, there was a story where there were some gaps. Marv was saying that he wasn't able to tie some of the stuff together, and I think George did a phenomenal job at that specific point. I had just taken a staff job here, meaning at DC. I was writing my full load of comics. I was doing special project for DC that took months to do, and 2 or 3 other problems going on all at the same time. And I found that I had instantly backed up on everything, and that's something I hate doing because I write out long plots. George says my plots always have to be cut because I tend to cram 32 pages of material into them. So we worked virtually all of that over the phone or in person. George lives about a half-mile from me, and George handled the majority of it. And I think he did a phenomenal job considering the sketchy material I gave him. And then the interview says it hung together very well considering. And his response was, "Oh yeah, George is the only person I've ever worked with that I trust to do that. He and I think so much alike about the group that I would never give that open feeling. I would have been there for any other artist but for George. I knew that he would be capable of doing it. He's so strong and a good plotter. He's a perfect pacer for the material, and I just love working with him." So, even obviously in that instance, giving him even more leeway to kind of shape things based on like sketchier material or whatever. So that's all. I just wanted to read that. I found this at a place here in town, close actually by where I live. Comics America. They have the place is jam-packed, filled with stuff, and I mean, I don't go in there too much, but every once in a while I'll go in and kind of dig, and sometimes you'll find some gems. So I was really happy to find this. This is book 6 of a series I didn't even know existed, so it's definitely going to be something that I'm going to look for more. Hopefully there's one on the artists and things too. So that's the top of the video. I just wanted to talk a bit about that. And then I don't know, after talking last time, there's a lot of superhero stuff being talked about on the channels, which I love, absolutely love, especially now that I'm getting into some of the other things, like, some Kirby and Ditko and Strange Tales and Daredevil, and I follow some of the new kind of superhero stuff. But one thing that I've noticed just in the videos that I'm following, there's not a lot of alternative kind of titles and things talked about, so I thought it might be kind of interesting to make, just a short video. Again, timing it right there. Just a short video of somebody that I'd like to start with for sure, but I mean, I think over time I'd like to kind of focus on some maybe alternative / underground, whatever you want to call them, artists that kind of had a big influence on me. And the first one that popped to my head was Peter Bagge, who did series such as Neat Stuff, created the pre-Simpsons amazing family, the Bradleys, which there was talk some years ago that they might try to make it into a animated series, but obviously that fell through. I think if you search on YouTube there might be some little shorts. It would have been hilarious. And then after the Bradleys and Neat Stuff, he took Buddy Bradley and kind of transplanted him in Seattle to create the series Hate, which is one of my all-time favorites. I've got all the single issues, and I also have just one of the kind of collected volumes. I'd like to get the other ones because it just completely spoke to me at the time. I was kind of his age-ish when I was reading them back in 1994 to 1998. This is the complete Buddy Bradley stories from Hate Comics Volume 2. And I mean, I was listening to a lot of the kind of music, and I had some, similar kind of friends as everybody did. I mean, it's just kind of general enough that it can kind of touch on any part of somebody's life, but I always just got such a huge kick out of it. And then more recently, I picked up these within the past year kind of thing. Some nice big thick volumes, another comics journal, with just interviews with Peter Bagge just about his career. And then even more recently kind of ties into something I'm picking up now. He has a new mini-series from Dark Horse called Reset. That's number 1. That's number 2 of 4. Which I'm enjoying enough. I mean, after Hate and everything, I kind of followed a little bit of some of the stuff he was doing, and it was kind of hit and miss with me. I enjoyed some of it, but nothing that kind of grabbed me as much as this early stuff did. So just kind of wanted to kind of go through each of these, just looking at the clock. And so when I first started kind of reading comics more seriously, like when me and my brother were kids, we had, you know, like Disney type of stuff and Archie comics and stuff like that, and he got into Marvel and he really liked Spider-Man and things. But what really kind of got my interest was when I discovered some underground comics. I remember being younger and going to the comic shop and having to ask for the alternative titles that they kept behind the counter, and they'd pull out a box from behind the counter, put them up, and I'd flip through it, and I'd get like Robert Crumb stuff, and I'd get Freak Brothers, Gilbert Shelton stuff, Rip-Off Press, Wonder Warthog, all these kind of titles, and, you know, 8-Ball and Daniel Clowes and stuff, which is bizarre to me that that kind of stuff would be kept. But some of it were these neat stuff. These are the original ones that I bought. I don't have the whole series, but I'll just kind of quickly show you number 4 there. And all this stuff, number 8, just really made an impression on me, you know. That was what I read mostly. Like I said, my brother was into the superhero stuff, and I was just into the drug culture and all that kind of thing. And the undergrounds and the comics with an X, all that stuff just was amazing to me, because it was some of the stuff was more personal stories, some of the stuff was really out there. Yeah, just very, very entertaining to me. And this one just really caught my attention because he had a bunch of characters in it. Junior was one of the characters, and Studs Kirby was another character that kind of really resonated with me. And then of course this was in these were the introductions to people like Buddy Bradley and the rest of his family, Babs, his sister, and yeah, just great little stories, great little gags, an absolutely messed up family that, you know, dysfunctional is even a nice way to put it. And that began my love of Peter Bagge, reading those and trying to hunt down anything else that he did. And then eventually they came out with the books, Bradley's stories collected from Neat Stuff, which I showed already, but there it is again. And they also did the same with Mr. Studs Kirby, who kind of said what he wanted and just really politically incorrect, and just goddamn funny, just really, really funny stuff. So then after that, like I said, you know, going on to hate, I didn't pull out all the issues, I just pulled out the first 10. So just kind of quickly show you those. Number 1, 2, 3 with his good buddy Stinky, who started a band and was a total screw up. His brother in that one. And eventually what Buddy did was he started a kind of a collector's type of store where he'd sell used records and all sorts of things. And then he talks about his girlfriends and all sorts of things. And like I said, all based in Seattle, so there was some grunge stuff. I think the band Tad made it into an issue, if you remember those guys. And yeah, so there's number 9, and then number 10 with the photo cover there. So anyway, that series just really completely blew me away. And to this day is something that I've probably reread the series, I don't know, at least a dozen times. And then, like I said, when I picked up the book, it just gave me another chance to kind of sit and read the whole darn thing again. So, big love for Mr. Peter Bagge. And then those were just the interview books and things. And then Reset, it's a guy that is getting experimented on, kind of a virtual reality thing to see how he reacts to kind of stressful situations or reliving his past or embarrassing moments, but he keeps kind of using trying to use the technology for his own kind of enjoyment, like trying to, he's back in high school and he's trying to have sex with all these girls that he wanted to, but they keep cutting him off, and then there's a bit of a relationship between him and the woman. I think he's a comedian who was getting into movies, I believe. I can't quite remember, but yeah, I mean, it's been pretty good so far. It's a little bit kind of like classic Peter Bagge. So yeah, Dark Horse, 4 issues. I am behind. I went on a trip recently, and so I haven't been to the comic shop in at least a month, so I know there's a stack of books waiting there for me. So yeah, that was the talk of that. Next time, I've got a few other ideas, and like I said, I'm kind of getting used to this. Going to try to look more at the camera. I think I have this time. Kind of like it. So today we'll go through another, it's like 16, coming up on 16 and a half minutes. So I'll just take the last couple of minutes and go through another one of the cubes. And maybe this time we'll go to, I don't know. How's about this one with some other guys? So I do have a bunch of the issues, but a couple of Fear Agent that I loved so much. I started reading it right from the beginning when I first heard about it. So I've got most of the issues, but I also wanted to collect the paperbacks as well. And then Tales of the Fear Agent. If you haven't read the series, really, really good. Kind of a throwback, sci-fi kind of action. Yeah, really entertaining. These are just some catalogs that I've collected over the years, and a little bit of DVD stuff there for you. A little something weird video catalog that. And then this kind of goes into some more of the guys I had mentioned in the last video too. Joe Matt. Such a big favorite of mine. His stories are hilarious. And at this stage of his game, this one unfortunately was super cheap. And you can see why it was so cheap, because papers are falling out. So it's something that I'm going to have to get again. But you can see even at the time how small he was working, and how many panels he was fitting into just one page. His style changed a little bit over time, but this is the cartoon diary of Joe Matt. So there's a lot of great stories in here. Lots of sex, his fixation on sex, and I think there's a few stories, his fixation on pornography and masturbating, and how that kind of ruled his life for a little while. And it's hilarious. And here it is right here. Joe Matt, the poor bastard. And this whole book is based on his sexual addiction to pornography, and just what it did to him. But then at this stage, and how it was affecting his relationship, and like a lot of these guys that end up kind of really enjoying the most, it's taken from their real life. So, I mean, obviously, somebody like this, it's going to be kind of exaggerated, I'm sure, but I think the gist of it is very true, and that kind of resonates, so that's very cool. And then another guy who I do really enjoy, and he has kind of quite a range of stuff, Mr. Chester Brown, and there's his book on Louis Riel, which again is really, really good. He kind of did the history of Louis Riel and Revolution, and decided to draw in a almost, as he said, almost kind of Tintin-ish style. I don't know if you can really see it too much there, but well worth picking up. And again, drawn in quarterly. Chester Brown is another one who takes a lot of stuff from his real life too. and this is the Playboy. He grew up in kind of a very religious family, and then he discovered Playboy magazine and discovered masturbation, and I swear it's not a theme through everything that I read. And then it's just, the whole book kind of focuses on him getting these Playboys, certain issues that he really likes, and then either burying them, like literally burying them, or throwing them away, or because he just can't deal with it, and then eventually buying them back as he gets a bit older, and then getting rid of them, and just his kind of how he feels about it, and how it kind of goes against his upbringing and things, and him coming to kind of terms with it. But you can see even in the pages that I showed there, it's quite a bit different. Just show you a couple more. Different style than it was in Louis Riel. Another Chester Brown, I never liked you. Kind of a retelling of a early relationship that he had with this woman. I believe this girl in, I think it was in high school, I think. And his use of kind of page layouts and stuff, you know, you'll get a page with like one panel on it, or a page with, you know, 4 that's on there, and then it'll go to stuff like this, you know, where he's doing a full page drawing, and yeah, just a really good writer. He's the writer of the infamous Paying for It, about his being a John, and his dealings with prostitutes, and going to pay to have sex with women, and his viewpoints on relationships in general, which, you know, I've heard many, especially on Ink Studs, they talked about it quite a bit, which I had mentioned in somebody's post before. This is a radio show, Ink Studs, and they talk to a lot of cartoonists, and it's usually kind of hour interviews, and after Paying for It came out, they were doing kind of best of the year kind of thing, and that was always one that was on the list, but there was a lot of people that kind of really ragged on it, and I completely disagreed with all of them. I thought it was an incredible read. I thought, you know, everybody really focused on the prostitution thing, when I think that for me it was more about his viewpoints on relationships and what he felt a relationship was, and especially after reading these other books by him and feeling like, you know, you're seeing kind of a side of somebody and kind of getting to know somebody a little bit, taking into account all these past books and then reading this is just a really, I thought he did an incredible job. And I mean, at the end of all his, or most of his books, he did it in Louis Riel too. He's got a whole bunch of writings where he'll literally go page to page, panel to panel, and give you kind of what he was thinking, and what was, in Louis Riel, what was historically accurate, what he maybe took a little bit of leeway with, artistic license with. And he did the same in Paying for It, and a lot of people had a problem with that section, mostly because they felt that, you know, they were a captured audience, and that he was trying to force them to accept his belief that prostitution should be legal. And I can totally see that, but you have to take both stories as a separate thing. You really do. I mean, his viewpoints, yes, they're his viewpoints, but the story at the end of the day was, I thought it was incredible. I thought it was really well done. And then I know he's been mentioned a few times, Mr. Will Eisner, Contract with God, kind of considered the first graphic novel. These are newer for me, within the past 6 months. A different comic shop that I visit every once in a while, who has some really amazing deals, and I found these there. They had quite a collection, so I picked up that one and this one called Invisible People, which I have not read yet. Yeah, Will Eisner, you know. Speaking of writers, and what I was saying before about Comics Journal really being, thinking that everything should be a piece of literary genius. One thing that kind of did that for me was Swamp Thing, Alan Moore's run on the Swamp Thing. So I've got all these. I think it was last year that I read them. Might have been last summer, actually. I was working, and every night after work I was coming home and reading Swamp Thing, and it was just, it completely took over my life for the months. I pretty much bought one right after the other. As soon as I finished one, the next day I went out to buy the next volume, and I think on like number 3 or 4, I actually had to wait a couple of weeks because no comic shop in town had it, so I had to wait for some to come in, and it drove me crazy because I was so into the story and I was so amazed at what I was reading. And you know, it's one of those things, you know, you hear hype of some things and you never think that it's real, but it just ends up blowing your mind. Boy, I hope that wasn't the camera stopping there. I'm going to keep going just in case it didn't. Yeah, what can I say? Darwin Cook doing Richard Stark's Parker. The third one is out. A friend of mine at work has it, said it's great. I've read a lot of the actual books. I've got a bunch up there. And then I'll just kind of fire through the rest of these. Ed Brubaker, Sleeper, Point Blank, and something else I mentioned last time, The Amazing Criminal, hardcover, and then the prize Freak in Possession, the Martini edition of the Parker books, which is just beautiful. Again, a friend of mine from work, we were literally counting down the days for this thing to come out because we were just such huge fans of the books that we could not wait. And it's got a lot of really great extra stuff in it, write-ups, and I think there's a short story in it as well. Yeah, I won't show you too much in here, but it's unbelievable, so I can't wait for the next one. Anyway, so yeah, there's that shelf empty. Let's hope that this camera is still on. Thanks for watching.